Hello, welcome to Italics, the Italian-American magazine. I'm your host, Anthony Tamburri. For this, our October edition of Italics, we will focus on two authors, one Italian, one Italian-American, whose contributions have greatly helped to shape and influence the modern political and social landscapes of their home countries. First on Italics, we'll meet Roberto Saviano, 29-year-old author and journalist from Naples, Italy. Saviano's book, Gomorrah, is an in-depth expose on the traditions and influence of the Neapolitan Mafia, named Comorra. Released by Mr. Saviano in 2006, Gomorrah met with unanimous international praise, winning awards and recognition for its vivid language and reportage style. Gomorrah has been translated into 42 languages. In 2008, a film version of Gomorrah was released, directed by Matteo Garrone, and has also garnered international awards and acclaim. Sadly, both the book and film release and their ensuing publicity have brought forth death threats against Mr. Saviano by Neapolitan crime lords whose business and activities Saviano exposed. On October 20th, 2008, 6 Nobel Prize winners, including Mikhail Gorbachev, Dario Fo, Reverend Desmond Tutu, and Günter Grass, publicly petitioned the government of Italy to protect the life and work of Roberto Saviano against the mafia and its increasing threats against him. This summer, Mr. Saviano spoke in New York City at the Penn World Voices Conference, and this is where we met with him. Next on Italics, we'll attend a press conference and book signing on the release of Know Your Power, A Message to America's Daughters, by the Honorable Nancy Pelosi, Speaker of the U.S. House of Representatives. Now, let's meet Roberto Saviano at the Penn World Voices Conference here at the CUNY Graduate Center.
My name is Antonio Monda, and it's my great privilege and honor to have with me a marvelous writer, a courageous man, and a great friend, Roberto Saviano. I want to ask Roberto if he agrees, if the high bourgeoisie, the aristocracy, the richness, the beauty of Naples is strictly related to the hell that he describes so well in Gomorrah.
Il commento spesso, no, degli americani.
When Americans or the English come to Naples or Palermo, they say, what a marvelous city, what a paradise inhabited by devils. It shows a kind of naivety, a kind of short-sightedness, to not comprehend how much often in those territories of desperation resides the heart of the economy of those territories. Scampia, the area in the north of Naples, is the biggest open-air plaza for drug dealing. If you pass there, it would seem a ruin. In reality, it's the place that makes the most money in the entire territory. We're talking about €5,000 a day for only one single mafia family. Therefore, that terribleness, that ugliness, that hell, in reality creates an incredible wealth. It's upon this paradox that the power that I talk about moves.
Roberto's extraordinary novel, Gomorrah, was published 2 years ago in Italy. It was sold already to 43 countries and 33 languages. My first question is, should we consider the book fiction or non-fiction?
Magari fosse fiction.
If only it was fiction. If these stories I tell in my book were not told through the literary medium, they wouldn't have upset anyone. It's the literariness that is the medium, which for me are true stories, is what upset the clans. Because we're talking here. If my book was sold in 5,000 copies, it would have been completely ignored by the mafias, by the Comorra. It's not what I've written that is dangerous, but the fact that it is read. My reader is what the mafia does not want. To give you some figures, the mafia has taken 150 billion euros a year. Comparatively, Fiat, including Ferrari, in the entire world, takes in 50 billion euro a year. According to the Procura Nazionale Antimafia, the mafias have 25,000 affiliates in Italy. Benetton has 7,000 workers. The mafia has about 200,000 direct henchmen. It is the largest Italian market, diffused throughout the entire world. I'm impelled to mention, because I'm abroad, the mafias throughout the world have been stopped wherever they've been stopped, not so much because there's been policing or investigations, but for the honest part of the Italian community in Germany, France, the US, Canada, Scandinavia, has decided, often silently, to oppose the diffusion of criminal entrepreneurship in silence. This is something that often goes unrecognized. And there's confusion between what is the Italian community and the mafia community. But as I often say to people who create this confusion, Giovanni Falcone was not born in Montreal.
Several things in the book are quite new, at least for me. For example, the presence of Comorra in the fashion industry. Can you tell us briefly how this happened?
Surely many of you have bought clothes believing you've bought originals, and they were surely fakes. Because the clans from my area bought stores in New York that were very successful. Then some closed, some seized. The major part of the Italian designer labels need to produce the highest quality of their products at low cost. They don't trust China, Hungary, or Albania for now. So the bid goes to southern factories, where people work without a break and with poor salaries. When the most famous labels in the world need to make purses, shoes, clothing, they come to my area and they hold auctions. A group of subcontractors participate. They each propose their prices and time frame, for example, €10 per item in 20 days. The label decides upon a precise price within a precise time frame. All the factories participate. The materials are given to all of them. But the label only takes and pays for the clothing made by the factory that has produced the highest quality in the shortest time. The others keep the materials, and those become the fakes, which in reality are not fakes, they're real fakes.
This is a letter that a boy in a juvenile detention wrote and then gave to a priest. Everyone I know is either dead or in jail. I want to become a boss. I want to have supermarkets, stores, factories. I want to have women. I want 3 cars. I want respect when I go into a store. I want to have a warehouse all over the world. And then I want to die. I want to die like a man, like someone who truly commands. I want to be killed.
Naive is he who thinks that those who are part of organized crime thinks they're getting away with something. Death is not a risk of the trade, it's part of the trade. The true boss is willing, for business, to die himself, to kill his children, to lose everything. This is the true risk. This is the real businessman that they consider to be successful. Since the time I was born, the Comorra has killed 4,000 people. The mafias have killed 10,000 people in Italy, more than the Gaza Strip. Once in a phone tap, 2 bosses were overheard discussing. One said, "How do we find out who has betrayed us and who is with us?" There was a blood feud happening. And one of them says, "Look, we can't find out, but let's start killing. Let's start killing our friends, because they get into the cars without thinking. If we kill them, even if they're innocent, someone will think they betrayed us, and our message will be clear." When this blood feud was over, the winning group, called the Spagnoli because they do business in Barcelona, won. The losing group, the De Lauro clan, wanted part of this group. They wanted to enter into this family. The Spagnoli told them, you can join us, but to prove that you've betrayed your own family, you must kill one of your relatives. That way we know you've really broken ties with your old family. So they began to kill off cousins, grandparents, aunts, uncles.
One question about what Roberto calls the land of fires, the garbage situation.
One asks why Naples is full of trash and doesn't manage to resolve it, as some of the more difficult cities such as Bombay or Mexico City. The answer is that the garbage dumps have been run for years by the Comorra, that they have filled them, above all, with toxic waste from all over northern Italy. The Lancet Oncology writes of the 20% rise of deformities in the territories run by the Comorra and the 12% rise of typologies of cancer. The Comorra goes to northern Italian businesses and proposes to dispose of its waste at a price sometimes as much as 80% less than legal contractors. In my area, they've disposed of everything and anything. Printer toner, corpses, because even the dead are a special type of waste, complicated to dispose of. When the cemeteries must remove the extreme dead, as those buried for more than 50 years are called, they run into difficulties because they have small budgets. The Comorra arrives, and for little money, they do a clean job. They take the bodies and dump them in the rivers.
Although in the last line you say, hey, you bastards, I'm still here. Frankly, do you think that we can have any hope?
Things would change if the Mafia stops being considered an Italian problem. If the biggest European market, amongst the biggest markets in the world, and I think about the Mexican drug trade, I think about the Russian Mafia and the New York real estate, I think about the enormous power of the Albanian Mafia here in the US. If these phenomena are not considered globally, there is no hope. Things will change if the economic rules change. It's not moral commitment that will change these things, unfortunately. If they keep winning the bids for outsourced contracting, that is the lowest price, they've already won. If they keep transferring income from cocaine to better their own businesses, they've already won. Because they often win on quality, because they win because they poison the free market.
You describe a few heroes in the book. There is a priest, Don Peppino Diana.
He wrote a document called For the Love of My People, I Will Not Be Silenced. It was a document in which a town priest said, from now on, I will tell. I will tell what I know, and I will tell it to everyone. For this, they killed him. They killed him because it was too much of a scandal that someone who knew began to tell. There's a homily by Don Peppino Diana that I've never forgotten. He was celebrating a funeral. He was very tired. I come from a town that has the most deaths by murder in all of Europe, and at the same time the most Mercedes purchased in all of Europe. Don Peppino said, I don't care to know who God is. Imagine the reaction to hearing such a thing in a town church. And he repeated, I don't care to know who God is. I want to know what side he's on. And in some way I've tried, and then that I've tried during the course of my life through my writing, Not so much to arrive at who knows what goal, but to have the obsession and the desire to take a side. That's it.
What difference do you see in organized crime between Italy and the United States?
In realtà le 5 famiglie di New York, per esempio,
The 5 families in New York are completely weakened.
chiedono sempre di più aiuto alle
They
mafie.
keep asking for more help from the Italian Mafia families, help which they are often given.
Dire che però le 5 famiglie hanno
But the 5 families made introductions to the other mafias, Russian, Albanian. Organized crime is not a problem that doesn't include the U.S. On the contrary.
la priorità data
The war on terror opens up enormous superhighways for criminal investments in the U.S.
per gli investimenti criminali negli Stati
Maybe it's time to pay attention, as in the past, to this phenomenon.
Uniti passati a questo fenomeno.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Speaker of the House.
Most of all, I learned that public service was a noble calling, that we all had a responsibility to the community. When I was growing up, I knew how to, I heard my mother do it so many times. I knew how to tell somebody how to get a place in the projects, a bed in City Hospital, a job. You know, I knew how to tell them where to go. And I never intended to go into politics. I wanted to have a more normal existence, right? And I met my husband in college. I went to Trinity College. He went to Georgetown in Washington. Paul Pelosi, my husband, is here someplace. San Franciscan, born and raised. Very Italian city, San Francisco. Those of you who've been there know the culture and the economics, the commerce of the city. The Bank of America today was founded by P. Giannini as the Bank of Italy. So going from Little Italy to San Francisco with Trinity College in between, we had 5 children in 6 years. Again, I'm not thinking about politics. One thing leads to another. Read my book and you'll find out how I went from the kitchen to the Congress, from homemaker to first Italian-American, first woman Speaker of the House.
How you got into politics? It's interesting.
Oh, I was more of a behind-the-scenes person. I was a party chair and I was promoting other people, never thinking that I would put myself on the line in that way. I wasn't even interested in doing it. And then our congresswoman took ill, and then she said to me, I want to support you to run in my seat. And I promised her I would, and then I had to win. When I ran for Congress, I was 47 years old, and they said, late in life, she ran for Congress. Well, my children are in their early 40s, so I don't consider that late in life, but it was after my 5 children were grown. Our youngest child was going to be a senior in high school. And this might interest you.
You still look pretty good to me, and I hope you don't consider that a sexist remark.
Don't do the math.
You do, Joe. Well, when you moved into Congress, before we get to Capitol Hill, what about Paul, your husband? How did he take the fact that you now were really in the big time?
Paul was wonderful. I said to Paul, I have this opportunity. Now, he was very supportive if I wanted to do it. He said, don't do it for any reason other than you have it inside of you that this is what you want to do.
In January of 1989, you came to the House of Representatives, and all of the old boys welcomed you, right?
Not quite. Barbara Boxer, my friend from San Francisco, invited me to join this group, and we would have dinner every Tuesday night together. And there were 3 women, Barbara Kennelly from Connecticut, she went to Trinity College where I did, Barbara Boxer and I, the 3 women and maybe about 15 men at this dinner. But they would never say, what do you think of that? It never occurred to them to ask us what we thought. In fact, if we suggested something, they wouldn't pay any attention to it until a man suggested it, and then it was the best idea in the world. One night, they start talking about childbirth. And when there was, when they had their babies, and it was, we were looking at each other, we were sort of smiling, thinking, well, surely now they will ask our opinion. They told us how long their labors were and how difficult their labors were, but never once even saying, does this make you uncomfortable, or you might know more about this subject. About a week later, we're having dinner again with Don Edwards, who is a beautiful member of Congress from California, the floor leader of the ERA, a person who really respected the opinions of women. You knew Don Edwards.
He finally asked you what your opinion was of something.
He asked my opinion. I said, oh my gosh, Don, that's shocking. And he said, why do you say that? And I told him the story of the previous week. Well, all the men were there, because this was our weekly Tuesday meeting, but he hadn't been there the week before, to which they said, that never happened. We would never have done such a thing.
That club you talked about, the old boys club, you said it was a club, you called it the Secret Sauce Club. But there's a message now for young women.
Well, I call it the Secret Sauce Club, because they gave us the impression when we'd ask if we could have a bill passed or this or that, that only they knew how to do any of this, and that they had what I called the secret sauce. Don't worry, you'll never know how to do this. We'll take care of it for you, and that's the way it is. And so what I say in the book is, there is no secret sauce. Just pull that curtain away. You can do it. Your ideas are fresh and new and diverse, and nobody has your ideas, you know, it's the way you would present them. When I ran for leadership, they said, who said she could run, A? And why aren't we doing everything the way she wants us to do it here? So they really had to get used to the idea. But you know what? They have.
Why did you think that you could become the first Italian-American female Speaker of the House?
Well, you know, sometimes I know why it took so long to have a first woman Speaker, knowing the culture there. I'll never understand why it took so long to have an Italian-American Speaker. We had so many talented people over the years. When I won that fight, which was the big fight before becoming Speaker, I went to the White House for my first meeting as a part of the leadership. I've been to the White House many times as a member of the Appropriations Committee and as a member of the Intelligence Committee, so I wasn't thinking that this was an intimidating meeting to me until I went into the meeting in a small table with the President, the Vice President, the Democratic and Republican leadership of the House and Senate, not 10 people at the table. And when the door closed behind me, I realized that this was unlike any meeting I had ever been to before at the White House. In fact, it was unlike any meeting that any woman had ever been to at the White House, because I was there as the leader of the House Democrats in my own right, not by appointment of the President, which is usually how women were present at those meetings. And when I was sitting there, and I could feel very closed in my chair, it was like many people were sitting with me on the chair. It was very crowded. What I became aware of was that every suffragette, every woman who had ever worked for the advancement of women in politics and government, in life in general, they were sitting there. Susan B. Anthony, Elizabeth Cady Stanton, Lucretia Mott, Alice Paul, you name them, they were all in that chair with me. And in that one instant, I heard them say, at last, we have a seat at the table. For that reason, I wanted to put my story down. It's not my speaker book about what it's like to be Speaker of the House. That will come later. This was how I got my personal story about how I got there, or what the opportunities were, what the challenges were, and how if I could go from being a mom of 5 in the kitchen in San Francisco to becoming Speaker of the House, just think of what the possibilities are for all of the other women.
When you became Speaker and went down to the White House, you write that President Bush showed you the same respect that you noted he had shown the previous Speaker, Dennis Hastert, a Republican.
The president has always been respectful of the office of the speaker. On more than one occasion, he'll say to me when we're sitting there, "I'm one," pointing to himself. "I'm one." Two, he'll point to Vice President Cheney, and "You're three." Just to make sure everybody remembers that. I don't know whether he's reminding me that he's one and I'm three, or he's reminding the other people in the room of the stature of the Speaker of the House.
First question from the audience. Madam Speaker, if Senator Obama becomes president, what are the top priorities would you want to have to address in the first 100 days?
Well, I describe it this way. Think of these four words: science, 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 and science. There's investments in science to make America the healthiest country in the world. The science and technology to make that us healthier at less cost to the American people and to people individually. Science to rebuild America's infrastructure. The science, the engineering that we need to build America's infrastructure in a way that takes us to the third point, reducing our dependence on foreign oil. In fact, eliminating it. And then the fourth is the innovation that is essential to do all of this. And innovation depends on education. Educate, innovate, compete, prevail, keep America number one. On an international basis, I would hope that we could safely, honorably, and responsibly end the war in Iraq. Part of our new direction that we want to take the country in also is a direction of more civility, more bipartisanship. It's really essential. Everything we did in this first session, the first Congress with the Democratic majority, whether it was raise the minimum wage, pass an energy bill, all of that happened in a strong bipartisan way. Sometimes people ask me, Sam, they'll say, what is it in your growing up in Baltimore that enabled you to deal with all of the diversity? And I said the most important thing when I was growing up was the respect that I was taught for my own cultural heritage. The pride we took in being Italian Americans equipped me to understand the pride that other people take in theirs. Our founders were so great. They were so great, they were so smart. And the Declaration of Independence, they fought a war, they won, they wrote a constitution. They also designed the Great Seal of the United States. And on it, in Latin, Great Seal, which is on the dollar bill, which you may have in your pocket, says, Novos Order Seclorum, a new order for the centuries. So confident were they in what they were doing that they said it would last for centuries. Nobody had ever done that in the history of the world before. But I bring it up because it was predicated on the idea that every generation had a responsibility to make the future better for the next generation. People flocked to our shores from all over the world, including from our Bella Italia, to come here. They thought the streets were paved in gold. They didn't know that many of them would pave the streets of America, but that would produce what they needed to make the future better for their family. So when I take pride in being an Italian American, it's not just for what's inside of each of us, it's what our contribution is to America. They talk about my being the first Italian American Speaker of the House. I accept that honor with the greatest of pride, standing on the shoulders of many of your ancestors who came here, and many of you, and knowing what our responsibility is to the future.